Chapter 21. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yellow Emperor's Divine Sword. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, this is the personal weapon of the Yellow Emperor, a human expert from 20,000 years ago. It was called the Emperor's Heart. It once followed the Yellow Emperor in battles everywhere, making a name for itself. After the Yellow Emperor died, this weapon felt that no one in the world was worthy to be its master, so it sealed itself and became rusty. I actually found the personal weapon of the ancient powerhouse, the Yellow Emperor, here. Shenran was stunned. Who was the Yellow Emperor? He was one of the powerhouses who had quickly risen after the Azure Supreme disappeared from the mortal world. 20,000 years ago, the Yellow Emperor and the Flame Emperor each ruled half of the territory of the fantasy world. At that time, other than the Flame Emperor, no one was his match. In the legends, this Emperor's Heart was the best material in the entire fantasy world that the Yellow Emperor had obtained. Coupled with half of the luck of living beings, the heaven-splitting divine sword was cast. Unmatched. It was one of the top 5 legendary divine artifacts in human history. The Yellow Emperor had once created a shocking record of killing 300 true emperors with a single sword strike. Shenran looked up at the narrative of the entire pile of weapons. It's a pile of scrap weapons. The weapons inside are considered useless scrap metal. Perhaps no one in the entire fantasy world would have thought that the famous divine artifact, Emperor's Heart, in the 20,000 years of human history was hidden in such an inconspicuous pile of abandoned weapons in the Empyrean sword sect. Heaven's will. Heaven's will. Shenran wanted to raise his head and laugh. This time, he did not obtain opportunities by observing other people's narratives. With his own luck, he had made it to this place and stood facing the Emperor's Heart. If that wasn't providence, what was? I, Shenran, am indeed the son of destiny. I was born to cultivate the Tao and deal with calamities. In a good mood, Shenran pulled out the Emperor's Heart buried in the pile of old weapons. He held it in his hand and studied it carefully. At this moment, this Emperor's Heart was wrapped in mottled heavy rust. If it were anyone else standing here, they would not believe that it was actually a supreme divine sword, the Emperor's Heart. Shenran's slender fingers kept rubbing the rust spots on the Emperor's Heart, as if he was looking at the woman he loved the most. Emperor's Heart, O Emperor's Heart, you will regain your former glory in my hands. Looking at the divine sword, Emperor's Heart, that was as cold and silent as ordinary scrap metal, Shenran said softly. Then he had a thought. A line of small words appeared under the narrative of the Emperor's Heart. Do you want to modify the narrative? Note. Currently, the host can modify the narrative 3x. Phew. Shenran took a deep breath, and the divine light in his eyes began to flicker violently. System, modify the narrative. Instantly, all the narratives about the Emperor's Heart were cleared and displayed as pending input. Without any hesitation, Shenran began to type the narrative. This is an ancient divine artifact, the Emperor's Heart. After the fall of the Yellow Emperor, this weapon felt that no one in the world was worthy of being its master. Therefore, it sealed itself and turned into its current rusty appearance. It was waiting for a young man who was born for cultivation and was born to face calamity, a young man with supreme bones, to deal with it. The moment it touched the young man's palm, the Emperor's Heart that had been silent for 10,000 years would wake up from its slumber and acknowledge the young man as its master. It would regain its dignity from 10,000 years ago. With excitement, Shenran finished modifying the narrative of the Emperor's Heart. Is that reasonable? It's a little unreasonable. Just as he was about to confirm the modification, Shenran suddenly thought of something and continued to modify the narrative. After 10,000 years, the awakened Emperor's Heart, which possessed wisdom and intelligence, would be able to perfectly adapt to and display the lethality of the young man's strength as his strength increased. After writing this, Shenran took a deep breath and wiped the sweat off his forehead. That was close. Fortunately, I was quick-witted. Otherwise, when the Emperor's heart woke up, it would probably suck me dry on the spot. Admittedly, the higher the quality of the weapon, the better. However, the prerequisite was that the person using the weapon had the ability to control it. For example, if you wanted to use a sword as your own weapon, you had to be strong enough to hold it. It was just like if you wanted to pick a powerful giant gun for a weapon. First, you needed to have the strength to handle the gun smoothly and aim it at the enemy. At the same time, you also needed to be able to withstand the recoil that could be produced when a bullet was fired. Otherwise, if you could not even lift your gun steadily, then you would not be able to aim accurately and hit the enemy. When you fired, the recoil would shatter the bones in your arm. It was clearly not worth it. Shenran had to add the subsequent description to the Emperor's heart's narrative. Otherwise, the consequence would be dire. The Emperor's heart, which was the weapon of the true Emperor, would awaken and acknowledge Shenran as its master. Then it would instantly suck dry all of his cultivation. Shenran would immediately turn into a dried corpse which lost all its vital force. Meanwhile, the Emperor's heart would continue to seal itself away and remain silent in the midst of this pile of discarded weapons. As the weapon of a true Emperor, the Emperor's heart naturally needed the user to have a matching true Emperor realm to perfectly control it. Hence, Shenran quickly introduced the Emperor's heart narrative and added a blurb. As his strength increased, he would awaken the corresponding power at the same time. There's no problem now. This Emperor's heart is able to mature after I changed the narrative. It's completely fitting for me to use until I reach the true Emperor realm. Shenran said excitedly, "System, generate a new narrative." Ding. Narrative in progress, ding. Narrative completed. Boom. In Shenran's hand, the Emperor's heart wrapped in rust began to tremble violently. It seemed to be jumping for joy that after 10,000 years, it had finally found a compatible new owner. The mottled rust on it began to peel off, and endless dazzling golden light dissipated from the Emperor's heart. All the weapons in the treasure vault trembled as the Emperor's heart's aura spread. Clang! 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 The tens of thousands of weapons placed on the weapons rack automatically broke away and flew over. Spiraling above Shenran's head, they kept spinning and making continuous sounds. Seeming to be paying respects to Emperor's heart, this divine artifact that had awakened after 10,000 years of silence. Ha! Why did my weapon suddenly come off me and fly toward the treasure vault? Mine too. Is this an experiment within the sect? At the same time, on the 9 peaks of the Empyrean sword sect, the weapons of both the disciples and the higher-ups involuntarily left their masters and flew towards the sky above the treasure pavilion. Tens of thousands of swords of various colors circled above the treasure pavilion. The scene was spectacular. All kinds of glorious rays emitted from those weapons. In an instant, colorful rays lit up the whole sky. These weapons were all celebrating the return of the Emperor. Do you want to go too? In the depths of the first summit, the founder of the Empyrean sword sect smiled at the horsetail whisk that was trembling in his hand. This horsetail whisk had followed him for thousands of years and had long developed intelligence. Hearing the great ancestor's question, the horsetail whisk calmed down a little. Go on, the great ancestor laughed softly and let go. The horsetail whisk immediately circled around the ancestor like a human before flying towards the treasure pavilion. The great ancestor of the Empyrean sword sect looked in the direction of the treasure pavilion. His gaze was ancient and profound, as if it could pass through the obstructions of alpine and buildings, cross space and time, and directly see Shenran holding the Emperor's heart. How many surprises and thrills are you going to give me, young prodigy? Chapter 22. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stop. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, that's the legendary personal treasure of the great ancestor of the Empyrean sword sect, the 3000 horsetail whisk. There are 3000 horsetails and every horsetail contains 3000 supreme sword intents. Back then, the great ancestor relied on this 3,000 horsetail whisk to launch our Empyrean sword sect. The 3,000 horsetail whisk is said to be worn by the great ancestor. It has long developed the intelligence of a divine artifact and is known as a half-step divine artifact. What exactly happened at the treasure pavilion? Even the 3,000 horsetail whisk was born. Inside the Empyrean sword sect, everyone looked at the scene of tens of thousands of weapons circling the treasure pavilion under the lead of the 3,000 horsetail whisk. Their hearts were filled with excitement and confusion. Buzz. They seemed to sense the respect of the weapons around. The divine sword Emperor's heart in Shenran's hand also buzzed, emitting a dazzling golden light like an enlightened monarch descending from the 9 heavens. It embraced all the weapons that saluted it, those inside and outside the treasure pavilion. On all the weapons bathed in golden light, it was as if the Lord of Heaven has carved a golden rune that was filled with the aura of a martial monarch realm expert. With the enhancement of this rune, all the weapons were upgraded. They became incomparably sharp. Is the awakening of the divine artifact a blessing for the people? This Emperor's heart has the open and benevolent heart of its previous master, the Yellow Emperor. At the entrance of the treasure pavilion, the elder of the Empyrean sword sect who was guarding the door watched this scene in a daze. But more importantly, that prodigy Shenran can actually obtain the approval of the Emperor's heart. As expected, the rise of our Empyrean sword sect is imminent. In fact, other than the great ancestor of the Empyrean sword sect, who was on the main peak, many higher-ups were secretly taking note of Shenran. Among them was naturally this elder who defended the treasure pavilion and was also one of the founders of the Empyrean sword sect, bestowed the title of a king. Today, there are blessings from the heavens. All the weapons in the Empyrean sword sect have been upgraded. God bless the Empyrean sword sect. His own potential was exhausted and it was difficult for him to break through again. The Emperor, Realm Elder, who had one foot in the grave, stood up lifelessly. In a lofty tone, he made an announcement to everyone in the Empyrean sword sect. At the same time, he waved his hand. Go back. Only then did the countless weapons circling the treasure pavilion reluctantly return to their master's hands. Looking at the weapons that had been strengthened, all the disciples of the Empyrean sword sect became emotional and fell prostrate on the ground. They shouted in the direction of the treasure pavilion, God bless the Empyrean sword sect. Congratulations to the elders. Congratulations to the sword sect. The Emperor, Realm Elder at the entrance of the treasure pavilion looked at these people with a smile on his face. He had just done the same thing as the great ancestor of the Empyrean sword sect did last night. It was entirely for the purpose of protecting Shenran. After all, Shenran's terrifying talent alone was enough to make the Empyrean sword sect's opponents come to assassinate him. If they knew that Shenran had also obtained the approval of the divine artifact to be its master, the outcome would be hard to predict. However, we just needed to wait for Shenran to mature. At that time, under his lead, our Empyrean sword sect would definitely regain its glory from 1,000 years ago. Thinking of this, the King, Realm Elder's face was filled with anticipation for the future. In the depths of the first summit, the great ancestor of the Empyrean sword sect caught the 3,000 horsetail whisk as it flew back excitedly. The elder who was looking at the entrance of the treasure pavilion from afar smiled. Wu Ren, I haven't seen you smile in 1,000 years. You saw the bright future of the Empyrean sword sect, right? Both the great ancestor and elder Wu Ren, who was guarding the treasure pavilion, were overjoyed. As the founders of the Empyrean sword sect, it could be said that they had dedicated their entire lives to this sect. They loved the Empyrean sword sect more than anyone else. In the treasure pavilion, the Emperor's heart, which was emitting endless golden light, slowly restrained its cutting edge. At this moment, golden patterns formed the domineering Emperor word on the black sword. The golden blade seemed to be able to destroy any obstruction and enemy. The divine splendor was reserved, leaving only endless solemnity and an ancient atmosphere. Shenran held it in his hand and felt to be of one blood with this divine sword. It was as if he was not holding a sword but a part of himself. Apart from the feeling of telepathy, as the owner, Shenran could deeply feel the power of the Emperor's heart. Unfortunately, with my current 6th level Divine Sea Realm cultivation, I can only unleash less than 10% of your strength. But don't worry, with my talent, I will definitely let you blossom into the most dazzling glory in the future. Shenran looked at the Emperor's heart, his eyes flickering with confidence. Buzz. The Emperor's heart, which had spiritual intelligence, trembled in response. It placed its firm trust in Shenran. Putting away the Emperor's heart, Shenran walked out of the treasure pavilion. Have you chosen a suitable weapon? When he reached the door, he heard Elder Wu Ren ask. Disciple Shenran greets Elder. I'm quite satisfied with my gains on this trip. Shenran bowed respectfully to him. Seeing that he had obtained the divine sword Emperor's heart, Shenran was still neither arrogant nor rash. Wu Ren liked him more and more. He smiled. As long as you're satisfied. You may go. Yes, I'll take my leave. Shenran bade farewell to Wu Ren and walked out of the treasure pavilion. Then he discovered that the disciples of the Empyrean sword sect who were walking on the road looked even happier than when he returned. For a moment, he wondered if something good had happened in the sect. Shenran prepared to ask someone. Do you want to die? How dare you throw the pastry I just bought on the ground? Young master, I'm sorry. The scene just now was too shocking. I was distracted, you trash actually dare to talk back. Pa! A loud slap drew Shenran's attention. He looked in the direction of the voices. A maidservant with a red palm print on her face was lying in front of an ordinary disciple in green clothes with an aggrieved expression. She was surrounded by scattered pastries. In addition to the red and swollen palm print on her face, there were also many bruises on the exposed limbs of the maidservant. It seemed that such a maidservant had been beaten up by many ordinary disciples in front of her. You trash, eat my food and use my money. I didn't expect you to not even be able to do such a small thing. The ordinary disciple in front of the maidservant ignored the people around her and cursed at the former. Shenran frowned when he saw this. He had never seen such trash who bullied the weak. He immediately prepared to walk forward. Then he noticed the narrative that had surfaced on the maid. This is a maid who looks ordinary and is usually bullied. In fact, she has the bloodline of the ancient divine Phoenix Empress. On the day her bloodline awakens, she will be peerless and become a supreme true emperor. She will inherit the title of the Empress Divine Phoenix and dominate a region. Empress Divine Phoenix. 10,000 years ago, the only peerless expert in the fantasy world was a woman who was on par with the other true emperors. Shenran was still in awe. The ordinary disciple in front of the maidservant felt that cursing was not enough, so he raised his hand and prepared to slap her again. Stop! Shenran's voice resounded throughout the venue. Chapter 23 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Do you dare? Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios The ordinary disciple who waved his hand turned a deaf ear. He increased his pressure on the pitiful maid in front of him. Pa, however, before his hand could fall, another slender, porcelain-skinned hand gripped it tightly. Everyone around felt their vision blur as if a peerless wind had swept past. When they regained their senses, Shenran, who was hundreds of feet away, had already moved in front of the ordinary disciple who had beaten up the maidservant in public. The person who grabbed the ordinary disciple's hand was Shenran. I'm disciplining my servant. What business is it of yours? Hurry up and let go. He felt his slap being blocked. This ordinary disciple seemed to be furious. However, when he wanted to pull his hand back, he realized that no matter how hard he tried, he could not shake off Shenran's hand at all. It was as if his hand was not held by another person, but was pressed under a towering mountain. That made him angry and shocked. He glared at Shenran. Do you know who I am? My name is Hong Xiaoxian. Hong Jing is my brother. At the mention of his brother's name, Hong Xiaoxian was extremely proud and raised his chin. Hong Jing. Isn't he the chief disciple of the 8th summit? Other than that, Hong Jing is also the trusted aide of the Tao seed, Wang Qingxian. This young man actually provoked Hong Jing's younger brother. He's probably in trouble now. Can't help it. He's a busybody. Hong Xiaoxian finished his sentence. It immediately caused a heated discussion among the onlookers. Some people sighed at Shenran's rashness. Someone shook his head. This young man is quite nice, but he's too reckless. This Hong Xiaoxian has been bullying others for a long time with his brother's support. That maidservant of his is miserable. I've seen her more than once. She was beaten up by Hong Xiaoxian on the street. If anyone else had done this, I would have intervened. Unfortunately, the maid's master is Hong Xiaoxian. The conversation of the surrounding people made Hong Xiaoxian even more smug. He revealed an evil smile. Kid, did you hear that? No one on the 8th summit dares to be disrespectful to me. If you know what's good for you and let go, I can consider letting you live. Shenran ignored him and looked back at the maid on the ground. Is this how he usually treats you? As he spoke, his expression showed that he felt sad for the maid. Hong Xiaoxian's maid was touched. However, for Shenran's sake, she lowered her eyes and turned her head away. I belong to my young master. How he manages me has nothing to do with you. I know that's not what you think. You're very kind. Shenran was not angered by the other party's words. He only looked coldly at Hong Xiaoxian. I like your maid. Tell me, what do I have to do for you to be willing to give her to me? Hearing this, the maid panicked. Please leave me alone. No one cares if I live or die. Shenran replied indifferently, I care. Hong Xiaoxian raised his eyebrows. Oh. You're playing the hero to save the damsel in distress. My maid is sallow and thin, and her figure is as thin as a stick. Do you like her? I've actually stopped wanting this incompetent maid a long time ago. In the past, if you exchanged 100 spirit stones with me, I would have agreed. However, today, kneel down and kowtow to me. Otherwise, there's no room for discussion. What if I must have her today? Shenran was relentless. My brother is ignorant and incompetent, but he's at the 8th level of qi refinement. Don't make things difficult for him. At this moment, a gentle voice came from the crowd. Hearing this, the surrounding onlookers were abnormally frightened and quickly made way for him. A man strolled slowly and came closer. It had to be said that this man had a handsome face and a gentle temperament. He was dressed in green and held a fan. There was a token at his waist with the words 8th Summit's First Disciple written on it. It was Hong Xiaoxian's elder brother, Hong Jing. At a glance, this person was excellent in both demeanor and appearance. The sect has a ring specially for disciples to fight. It's specially used to resolve conflicts between disciples. Hong Jing said slowly, of course, some conflicts can't be resolved. Therefore, there is also a death ring specially set up in the sect's rings. Those who went onto the ring had to bet all their wealth and lives. The winner will have everything that belonged to the loser. As for the loser, he will naturally die. Hong Jing took a step forward with a cold expression. Do you dare to fight me to the death? Hong Jing's words triggered another discussion. Isn't Hong Jing clearly bullying him? As the chief disciple of the 8th Summit, he has the highest cultivation level in the 8th Summit. Who would dare to fight him to the death? Although Hong Jing looks elegant, he's actually extremely bloodthirsty. Whenever he finds an opportunity, he will force the other disciples to fight him to the death. In the death ring, every time he wins, he won't directly kill the loser. Instead, he will peel off the opponent's skin bit by bit and dig out his internal organs. He will torture the opponent to death. Hiss, someone gasped. I didn't expect this person to be so terrifying and cold-blooded. Who else do you think his brother learned his bad habits from? He was described as cold-blooded and terrifying by the people around him. Hong Jing did not look angry at all. Instead, he looked very pleased. He liked the sound of terrifying and cold-blooded. Do you dare? Opposite Shenran, Hong Shaoxian forced a sinister smile. Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Killed with one punch. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, are we betting everything we have? Including this maid. Shenran was immediately interested and turned to look at Hong Jing. Not to mention my maid, as long as you can defeat my brother, you can take away my wealth and life. Do you dare to enter the death match with my brother? Hong Shaoxian was extremely confident. Ever since he entered the 8th summit, he had never seen an ordinary disciple defeat his elder brother. In every death match, all the opponents were tortured to death by Hong Jing. He himself liked the way those abused people begged. He was usually unreasonable. Actually, he also hoped that someone would fight him because of his provocation. In this way, he could ask his brother to kill others sadistically. Sometimes, Hong Shaoxian would even ask his elder brother to let him skin and tear apart his opponents. You two brothers' lives and entire fortune. That suits me. Shenran's eyes lit up and he gladly agreed to enter the death ring with Hong Jing. After all, he wanted to build a good relationship with the future Empress Divine Phoenix. Besides, he had heard all the discussions around him. This Hong Jing was actually Wang Qingshuan's subordinate, and he even had that disgusting eccentricity. He had to get rid of them quickly. You agreed. Then why aren't you going to the ring? Hurry up. Hearing that Shenran had agreed to enter the death ring, Hong Shaoxian was even more excited than his elder brother, Hong Jing. Young master, when the maidservant heard that Shenran wanted to fight Hong Jing to the death for her, she immediately grabbed Shenran's pants and looked at him pleadingly. Good girl. Don't worry, it's fine. Shenran gently stroked the maid's head and comforted her softly. Humph, seeing how much you like my brother's ugly maid, I'll send her down to be with you when you die. But I'm afraid it won't be easy before you die. Hong Jing waved the fan in his hand and said slowly. Let's not waste time here. Let's go. With that, Shenran walked towards the ring set up in the sect. Hong Jing jumped lightly and followed. This young man is too impulsive. As the chief disciple of the 8th summit, Hong Jing's strength has reached the 6th level of the Divine Sea realm. His talent is terrifying. I wonder what this young man has to rely on. I hope he's not just being impulsive. They all followed behind, talking incessantly. From their conversation regarding who the winner would be, they were inclined towards Hong Jing. The two of them faced each other in the ring. Everyone present fell silent, holding their breaths and waiting for the results. In the ring. Apart from Shenran and Hong Jing, there was also an elder who was in charge of being the witness of the death match. Once the death match begins, only life and death can be decided on the stage. No matter the outcome, the winner can have all the money of the loser, and at the same time, the grudge will be settled. Do you have any objections? The elder spoke slowly. They both nodded. In that case, let's start over there. As soon as he finished speaking, elder witness had already appeared below the stage. The death match began. You know what? I appreciate your ignorance, Hong Jing smiled as he fanned himself. Unexpectedly, he only got halfway through his sentence. He heard a sharp stab in his ear. Shenran, who was opposite him, flashed and appeared in front of him in the next moment. Hong Jing tensed. He did not expect Shenran to be so fast. Hong Jing was completely unprepared. He didn't even have time to mobilize the spiritual energy in his divine sea. Buzz. At this moment, a light blue protective shield popped out from the jade pendant on his neck. This was Hong Jing's family heirloom. The black tortoise guardian jade. The popped-out protective shield could unleash a full-powered attack at the first level of the illumination realm. And yet... Crack! The black tortoise guardian jade's protective shield exploded the moment it touched Shenran's fist. The speed of Shenran's fist was not affected at all. Boom! The punch that broke the sound barrier smashed into Hong Jing's chest. His chest caved in, forming a huge pit. A bulge appeared behind Hong Jing's back. Then the protrusion exploded. A large bloody hole appeared in his back. Scarlet blood, mixed with a large number of bones and internal organs, sprayed out of the big hole. It stained most of the ring's area blood red. Hong Jing's eyes bulged, and the blood vessels on his eyeballs were red. His expression was exceptionally ferocious. He opened his mouth to say something. In the next second, blood flowed out of the 7 apertures of his head and he fell forward on the ring, dead. Looking through the gaping hole in his back, the trunk was empty. Under the huge force of Shenran's punch, all the internal organs and vertebrae turned into fragments and sprayed out. Shenran, victory. Below the stage, the elder in charge of witnessing this death match announced the outcome expressionlessly. All the onlookers stared in disbelief. They had not expected the death match to end after less than half a second. Was Hong Jing killed by a single punch? Shenran frowned. Aren't you at the 6th level of the Divine Sea Realm? I'm also at the 6th level of the Divine Sea Realm. I haven't even used my cultivation yet. You can't even withstand a punch from my physical strength. Chapter 25. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let's go home. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, my brother, is dead. Hong Xiaoxian looked at Hong Jing, who had died miserably, and his mind went blank. He could not accept that his brother, who was like a god to him, had died. Impossible. This is impossible. Hong Xiaoxian screamed like a defeated dog whose tail had been stepped on. His face was pale, his hands and feet trembling as he tried to get onto the ring. Bang! Hong Xiaoxian, who was about to move forward, blacked out. His face seemed to have hit an unshakable mountain. He saw stars and fell back, nose bleeding. I won. Shenran wiped his chest that Hong Xiaoxian had bumped into, his face expressionless. My brother couldn't have lost. It was all an illusion. An illusion. Hong Xiaoxian sat on the ground, his nose bleeding and tears flowing uncontrollably. He screamed and yelled at the top of his lungs. Then Shenran's fingers slowly clasped his head. Hong Xiaoxian's body tensed up, and a chill ran from his tailbone to his head. Only then did he regain some composure. He felt the 5 fingers gripping his skull tighten. The increasing pain made him kneel down and beg for mercy. Senior brother, the person you were fighting with was my elder brother, not me. It had nothing to do with me. I apologize for offending you before. Don't you like my maid? I'll give her to you. And all my wealth. I can give it to you. Please let, bang. With the sound of a head being crushed, Hong Xiaoxian's shrill voice stopped. Bang. Another thud. It was the sound of Hong Xiaoxian's headless body falling to the ground. He circulated his spiritual energy to his palm and shook away the bloodstains. Only then did Shenran walk to the maidservant and take her hand. He said softly, "You're with me from now on. Let's go. The future Empress Divine Phoenix will become my maid. Just the thought of it is exciting." Yeah. The future Empress Divine Phoenix had yet to recover from the few seconds of immense shock. When she heard Shenran's voice, she instinctively responded. They walked out of the viewing area of the ring. Hearing the intense discussion of the people behind her, the maidservant suddenly came to a realization. She looked at Shen Ran with shock in her eyes. This young man had just killed the chief disciple of the 8th summit for her. Why? The maid spoke softly. Because you're the future Empress Divine Phoenix. Of course, Shen Ran wouldn't say that. Because no one is born inferior. I couldn't stand the way they bullied you. Shen Ran looked back and said with a smile, my name is Shen Ran. I still don't know your name. Young Master Shen Ran, my name is Yueshuang. Yueshuang stopped in her tracks and bowed seriously to Shen Ran. Thank you, Lord Shen Ran, for everything you have done for Yueshuang. I will serve you well. Shen Ran frowned. I told you, I killed them because I couldn't stand them. Not for you, but for myself. Yueshuang was stunned on the spot. Lord Shen Ran, so you don't want Yueshuang anymore. Then what path do I take? That's not what I meant. Shen Ran held his forehead helplessly. I mean, I can make you my maid, but that's only your job. Other than when you're working, Shen Ran and Yueshuang are equals. No one is higher than the other. Is it really, all right? Yueshuang looked incredulous. She was born into a poor family. Her father was a gambler and incurred a mountain of debt. In order to return the money, Yueshuang was sold off to someone as a maid at the age of 8. She had been taught from a young age to remember that she was a servant, a slave, and would always be inferior to others. She had to be cautious and prudent with everyone. In the past 10 years, no one had ever said that they were all equals like Shen Ran. But of course. Seeing that his words made an impression on Yueshuang, Shen Ran smiled. He walked up to Yueshuang and grabbed her shoulder. You can call me Shen Ran, but don't call me Lord Shen. I don't like that. Shen Ran. Yueshuang stammered and tried several times before she could say Shen Ran's name in full. Yes, that's it. Shen Ran quietly encouraged her. He asked, your name is only Yueshuang. No last name at the question. Yueshuang thought again of the man who had abandoned her at the age of 8. I have no last name, and no home. Yueshuang's eyes dimmed. Then you can take my surname from now on. Shen Yueshuang, this name sounds pretty good. How can that be? Yueshuang looked up, her eyes filled with shock. Shen Ran smiled and said, because I lost my family a long time ago and grew up alone. I haven't experienced the feeling of having a family yet. Are you willing to be my family? Yueshuang looked into Shen Ran's sincere eyes and confirmed that he was not lying. A thick warmth spread from the bottom of her heart. For the first time, someone was willing to protect her. For the first time, someone said they were equals. For the first time, someone asked if she would like to be his family. I do. Shen Yueshuang's reply was as soft as a mosquito. This is a young girl who looks ordinary and has been bullied all the time. In the end, she was saved by the young man with the sacred bone. In fact, she has the bloodline of the ancient divine Phoenix Empress. On the day her bloodline awakens, she will be peerless and become the supreme true emperor. She will inherit the title of the divine Phoenix Empress and become the strongest right-hand person of the young man with the supreme bones. Seeing the change in Shen Yueshuang's narrative, Shen Ran smiled and said, let's go home. Chapter 26. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uproar. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The matter of the chief disciple of the 8th summit, Hong Jing, who was at the 6th level of the Divine Sea Realm, being killed by an unknown ordinary disciple with one punch, had caused a huge uproar in the Empyrean Sword sect. Everyone was guessing who this ordinary disciple was. In the end, after many investigations, they discovered that this disciple from the 8th summit called Shen Ran had actually been promoted from a servant disciple. Before this, he was an ordinary disciple of the 9th summit. He was only demoted to a servant because he failed the talent test. Unexpectedly, he had just become an ordinary disciple again and did such a shocking thing. Many people wondered if Shenran had obtained some extremely huge opportunity. That was why he had the strength he had today. And the 8th Summit Elder, Luo Qifeng, who had personally promoted him, might know the full truth. Therefore, many people visited him, one after another, wanting to learn the facts from him. Luo Qifeng looked equally baffled. He did not expect Shenran to do such a ferocious thing after becoming an ordinary disciple. Luo Qifeng had promoted Shenran from a servant disciple to an official disciple because the latter had saved him. He did not care if the other party had obtained some fortuitous encounter or had unlimited potential. Speaking of being saved by Shenran, it was an embarrassing matter that Luo Qifeng did not want to mention in his life. Therefore, in the face of countless visitors, Luo Qifeng chose to stay behind closed doors. Of course, he did not know what was going on with Shenran's strange increase in strength. However, Luo Qifeng still enjoyed the evaluation from the outside world, that he had the acumen to scout talent. He was prepared to find time to ask Shenran what was going on. How can this be? How can this be? At the 9th summit, Wan Xiling listened to the rumors about Shenran and seemed abnormally anxious. She couldn't figure it out. Why did a person with ordinary talent, comprehension, temperament, background, and foundation now become so eye-catching? He killed the first senior brother of the 8th summit, who was at the 6th level of the Sea Realm, with a single punch. Half a month ago, he was only at the 6th level of Qi refinement. How could his strength be so terrifying in just half a month? Could it be that Shenran accidentally obtained a huge opportunity? Wan Xiling frowned. Mother, if you hadn't demoted Ran, he would still be a disciple of the 9th summit. Wan Qingqing looked unusually disappointed. Wan Xiling glanced fiercely at her daughter, who didn't understand the atmosphere. I wonder what kind of opportunity he had. He's already so powerful when he just entered the 8th summit. But so what? No matter how strong he was now, could he be stronger than Wang Qingxian? In the past, he was weak and Wang Daoxi did not notice him. Now, Shenran's name was known by everyone in the Empyrean Sword sect. Perhaps one day, Wang Qingxian will remember the grudge between the two of them and settle it with him. That's right. Hearing her mother's words, Wan Qingqing came to a realization. I have to remind Ran to pay more attention to Wang Qingxian. With that, Wan Qingqing ran out the door. Where are you going? Stop right there. Wan Xiling followed her out angrily. Your Highness, I've already checked the list. On the day Qian Shu and Zhong Yu met with an accident, Shenran also entered the Grand Myriad Mountains. On the second main peak, Wang Qingxuan's residence. Listening to his subordinate's report, Wang Qingxian gritted his teeth. Previously, when I saw that he was only at the 6th level of Qi refinement, I eliminated him as a suspect. I didn't expect. In just half a month, he was able to advance from the 6th level of Qi refinement to the 6th level of the Divine Sea Realm. That Shenran must have obtained some great opportunity. Now that I think about it, Qian Shu and Zhong Yu might have fallen into the hands of Shenran, who obtained the opportunity. Bang! Wang Qingxian suddenly exerted strength and crushed the hard wooden armrest. Bring that Shenran back for me. Your Highness Daoxi, you must not. Shenran has been in the limelight these few days. If you suddenly touch him, you might be investigated by the sect after you suddenly killed the suspects on a large scale. The sect has been paying more attention to you. If your identity is exposed, it won't be worth it. His subordinate quickly advised him. Then how do you think we should deal with him? Wang Qingxuan's gaze was cold and filled with killing intent. The subordinate braced himself against the pressure and said, Shenran is naturally a hidden danger and can't be left alone. However, when he's still in the sect, it's easy for the sect to suspect if we touch him. However, as a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect, he has to leave the sect every month to complete a sect mission. When that happens, the risk will be minimal. It won't be too late to strike then. Wang Qingxian was silent for a moment before he finally said slowly, "All right, we'll do as you say. Send someone to keep an eye on that Shenran. As long as he dares to take half a step out of the sect, I'll tear him to pieces." Yes. Wang Qingshuan's subordinate kowtowed heavily. At the same time, in an ordinary disciple's residence on the sixth summit, an ordinary disciple named Chen Beixian slowly opened his eyes. "I, the reincarnation emperor, Chen Beixian, have finally returned to 10,000 years ago." Chapter 27. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Breakthrough. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. This ordinary disciple of the sixth summit called Chen Beixian was only at the third level of the Divine Sea realm. His talent was ordinary. However, only he knew that he would have countless opportunities in the future. In just 400 years, he became the supreme true emperor and became the famous reincarnation emperor. He even vaguely touched the threshold of the true emperor realm. Unfortunately, because he improved too quickly, his foundation was unstable. In the end, when he was about to cross the threshold of the true emperor realm, he was severely injured by the heavenly tribulation that descended from the sky. It allowed his enemy to find an opportunity. In the end, the famous reincarnation emperor died and his Tao vanished. What was unexpected was that the reincarnation emperor who had died, had unexpectedly been reborn into his youth 10,000 years later. He became a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect who was barely 20 years old. Since the heavens can give me a chance to start over, I must seize it. This time, I will take all the opportunities into my arms and achieve a perfect foundation. In this life, the reincarnation emperor will not only be one of the top experts in the world, but is the only one. At the same time, I have to cross the threshold above the true emperor realm and reach the peak realm that no one has ever reached. Chen Beixian narrowed his eyes, his gaze shining with confidence. His ordinary talent had not changed with his rebirth. But in his previous life, he hadn't risen through talent. Instead, there were countless opportunities. Moreover, after being reborn, not only did he remember those opportunities that belonged to him in the next 10,000 years, he was equally clear that those opportunities that did not belong to him but were equally profound. With his unique advantage, rebirth, Chen Beixian could completely obtain all the opportunities in advance without anyone knowing. This was also the source of Chen Beixian's confidence. But after being reborn, everything didn't seem to be exactly the same as in the previous life. In Chen Beixian's mind, Shenran, who had been in the limelight recently, suddenly appeared. In my previous life, there was no disciple named Shenran who suddenly rose up. In fact, in the 10,000 years of my previous life, I had never heard of someone like Shenran. Could it be that with my rebirth, the heavenly Tao also underwent an indescribable change? Chen Beixian fell into deep thought. It seems that I have to pay more attention to that disciple named Shenran. It had been 7 days since he killed Hong Jing. Over the past few days, he had been coming to the mountain gate to observe the narratives of the disciples and collect opportunities he cultivated in his own residence. After killing Hong Jing on the death ring, not only did he obtain all the assets of the two brothers, Hong Jing and Hong Shaoxian, but he also inherited the status of the chief disciple of the Eighth Summit. Currently, his residence could be said to be the most luxurious among the disciples of the Eighth Summit. It had 3 floors of quaint buildings. There were even vast courtyards that occupied dozens of acres. Among them, there were ornamental vegetation gardens and rockeries. Apart from that, what satisfied Shenran the most was that there were spirit veins specially used to supply spiritual energy in his residence. The concentration of spiritual energy in his residence was more than 10 times that of the servant-disciple area back then. It was almost as dense as the spiritual energy in the Ghost Cry Cliff. However, it was different from the spiritual energy in the Ghost Cry Cliff because there was a spiritual vein hidden underground that connected to the first main peak. Unless the Empyrean sword sect fell, the supply of spiritual energy in Shenran's residence was boundless. Crack. With the sound of a bottleneck shattering, Shenran's realm rose from the 6th level of the Divine Sea realm to the 7th level. No, without the enhancement of opportunities, my cultivation speed is still a little slow. Shenran, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes and said in a dissatisfied tone, I cultivated for 7 days before barely breaking through to the 7th level of the Divine Sea realm. As expected, I still have to rely on opportunities to cultivate quickly. If outsiders heard Shenran's words, they would probably vomit blood from anger. Back then, Wang Qingxian relied on the enhancement of the blood cloud powder and used 3 years to break through to the illumination realm. Already, he was praised as a peerless genius. At this rate, even if Shenran relied on his own cultivation, he would probably be able to break through to the illumination realm in less than 4 months. Yet, he still found it slow. But in the past few days, I haven't seen many opportunities that can satisfy me. How distressing. Sighing, Shenran slowly stood up. He walked over to the mirror and studied his appearance. At this moment, his facial features were handsome and flawless, and his face was like jade. His black hair was like a waterfall, and his eyes were clear and spotless. It exuded the noble aura of an immortal descending to the mortal world, and a cold and dignified aura that forbade intimacy. At a glance, one would feel ashamed of one's inferiority and keep a distance from him. This is what a natural-born supreme bone young man should look like. Shenran looked at himself and nodded in satisfaction. Meanwhile, a narrative on him surfaced. This is a young man born with the supreme bones. He has the Panga sacred body that is immune to corrosion of curses, and the ancient immortal eyes that can see through the supreme techniques of the world. His talent is 1 in a million. At this moment, Shenran suddenly realized that there was additional content to what he had entered back then. At the end of his narrative, there were a few additional sentences that did not come from him. Chapter 28. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the future, he will rise in the Empyrean sword sect and become an invincible legend. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, this is a young man born with the supreme bone. His talent is unprecedented. He was born to cultivate the Tao and to deal with calamities. In the future, he will rise in the Empyrean sword sect and become an invincible legend. Rise in the Empyrean sword sect. Shenran was slightly surprised to read this. Although he was currently in the Empyrean sword sect, it did not mean that he would definitely stay there in the future. After all, there were countless sects in this fantasy world. Perhaps thousands of years ago, the Empyrean sword sect was an overlord and a colossus. But at this moment, this sect had already declined for many years and was waning with each passing day. Shenran even thought that after he collected all the opportunities of everyone in the Empyrean sword sect, he might consider changing to a stronger sect. He did not expect such a change in his narrative. But since it's mentioned in the narrative, it can't be fake. Perhaps the Empyrean sword sect will give me a different surprise in the future. Shenran thought to himself. During this period of time, it was said that all kinds of phenomena and auspicious signs had appeared in the Empyrean sword sect. Many people came hoping to join the Empyrean sword sect. Even the servant disciples who were usually in charge of handling chores became popular in the outside world. It made the outside world flock to it. How did the Empyrean sword sect rise to power? How unpredictable. Shenran had no clue at all. However, since the narrative had said that he would rise in the Empyrean sword sect, it seemed that he had to remain in this sect well into the future. Knock, knock. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. I'm here to see senior brother Shenran. A charming female voice came through. Yueshuang, bring the person in. Yes, brother. Shen Yueshuang immediately responded obediently and ran to open the door. A while later. A beautiful young female disciple with a hot figure stood in front of Shen Ran with two servants carrying boxes. Senior Brother Shen, my name is Lin Mei. I'm also an ordinary disciple of the 8th Summit. Shen Ran noticed that Lin Mei's realm was at the 4th level of the Divine Sea realm. Among the many ordinary disciples, she was considered outstanding. The two servants behind her were actually at the 1st level of the Divine Sea realm, stronger than many ordinary disciples. It seemed that this Lin Mei had a powerful background. May I ask why you're looking for me? Shen Ran asked her. Lin Mei had natural charisma which she was born with. She was charming with just a faint smile. Senior Brother Shen, I'm here to invite you to join my Lin family and become a guest elder. I'm sorry, but the thought hasn't occurred to me. Shen Ran rejected her directly. Senior Brother Shen, don't be in a hurry to refuse. Lin Mei's expression became pitiful and rather touching. Senior Brother Shen, most of the sect disciples will serve as guest elders of other families other than their own families. This will not only foster the relationship between fellow disciples, but they will also obtain more cultivation resources. Besides, junior sister also knows that Senior Brother Shen grew up alone. When I found out about this, my heart was broken. As she spoke, Lin Mei's eyes turned red, as if she was sad about Shen Ran's difficult life. If Senior Brother Shen can join our Lin family, not only will you be able to get a home, a place to return to, but our clan leader also said that as long as Senior Brother Shen agrees, the Lin family will provide 100,000 spirit stones and unlimited cultivation resources every year for Senior Brother Shen to cultivate. Moreover, Senior Brother Shen's heroic posture of instantly killing Hong Jing in the ring that day has lingered in my heart. As long as Senior Brother Shen joins the Lin family, we can. Lin Mei took 2 steps closer to Shen Ran and deliberately puffed out her full chest. With her 2 red cheeks, she made an ambiguous expression. At the same time, a strange fragrance wafted from her body. Shen Ran noticed that the 2 servants behind Lin Mei could not help but breathe faster in the presence of the fragrance. Even their heartbeats became heavy. A change also occurred between their legs. Not only did this Lin Mei look charming and alluring, but she also had the ability to seduce men's desires. I'm sorry, junior sister Lin, Shen Ran shook his head firmly. Lin Mei's methods were useless against the ancient immortal eyes that could break through all illusions. Lin Mei walked back dejectedly. Eldest miss, you're already showing such sincerity. This Shen Ran really doesn't know what's good for him. The servant behind her was indignant. Lin Mei shook her head and said, no wonder. With the strength he displayed that day, I'm afraid there are already families with better conditions who have come before us. At the same time, at Shen Ran's residence. Why did you refuse her, brother? Shen Yueshuang was puzzled. She offered a generous reward of 100,000 spirit stones a year. And it seems that she's very interested in you. She's so beautiful. Really. But in my eyes, she's far inferior to you. Shen Ran smiled. Shen Yueshuang blushed and lowered her head without saying anything else. Shen Ran naturally had his own plans for refusing. After all, with supreme talent, opportunities could also be obtained through narratives. Joining other families would not help him much. It would also give Shen Ran additional responsibility to bear. It was not worth it. By the way, I'm going out of the sect to complete the sect mission this month. Remember to stay at home and cultivate well, Shen Ran said. Okay. Shen Yueshuang nodded obediently. Then Shen Ran walked out of the residence and walked towards the mission hall. At the same time, the future reincarnation emperor, Chen Beixian, was also heading to the mission hall. Chapter 29. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Interception. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. If possible, Shen Ran really did not want to waste time on completing the mission. Unfortunately, as an ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect, he had to complete a sect mission once a month. Otherwise, he would be expelled from the sect. Of course, this was already much easier than being as servant disciples who had to complete chores every day. He arrived at the mission hall. Shen Ran habitually swept his gaze across all the ordinary disciples present. This is an ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. His talent is ordinary. If nothing goes wrong, he will live an ordinary life. An ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. If nothing goes wrong, he will live an ordinary life. Ordinary disciple. Ordinary life. He took a look at all the ordinary disciples in the mission hall. Shen Ran did not see an ordinary disciple with an opportunity. I don't believe that not even one of the remaining ordinary disciples of the Empyrean Sword sect has an opportunity. Shen Ran frowned. He decided not to rush to accept the mission and leave. Instead, he stood at the entrance of the mission hall and read the narratives of the passers-by. Heaven helps those who work hard. Finally, he recorded 2 opportunities worth taking. This is an ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. His talent is not bad. On June 11, 3075, when he was sightseeing at the hidden Dragon Mountain, he accidentally discovered a secret canyon. There was actually a spring formed from the blood of a true dragon after it died. After bathing in the spring, this disciple obtained the physique of a true dragon. His cultivation talent was raised to a higher level and he became a king realm expert in the future. This is an ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. On the 19th day of the first month of the year 3074, when he completed a mission to eliminate the Black Mountain bandits, he discovered a sword mark left behind by the peerless sword god in a cave in the back mountain of the Black Mountain bandits' base camp. He used this to comprehend the sky-splitting technique, sword technique, and was accepted as a legacy disciple by the Empyrean Sword sect master. Now you're talking. After observing 2 good opportunities, Shen Ran smiled. Satisfied, he was about to look away when a narrative made up of numerous descriptions caught his eye. Opportunity 1. This is an ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect who was reborn from a true emperor expert 10,000 years later. Although his talent is mediocre, he knows the direction of all history in the next 10,000 years. At the same time, this disciple has also grasped countless top-notch opportunities. If nothing goes wrong, he will rely on the opportunities he has to become the only great emperor who will sweep through everything in the future. Opportunity 2. In the hidden Dragon Mountain, there is a spring water formed by the bloodline of a true dragon. Bathing in it can obtain the physique of a true dragon. Opportunity 3. At the back of the base camp of the Black Mountain bandits, there is a sword mark left behind by the sword god in the cave. Observing it can allow you to comprehend the peerless sword technique, heaven-splitting technique. Opportunity 4. On the 20th of February, 3074, in the north of the Grand Myriad Mountains, at the gathering area of the primordial fierce beasts, there will be a primal chaos divine fruit that ripens every 5,000 years. Opportunity 5. On February 23, 3074, 10,000 miles south of the Empyrean Sword sect, an ancient mystic realm opened in the territory of the Dayan dynasty. At that time, the Holy Maiden of the Dayan dynasty will enter the mystic realm and hide in the hole of the ancient Fusang tree. One can obtain the friendship of the Holy Maiden that she will never betray. Opportunity 6, Opportunity 7. Good God! Looking at the numerous opportunities held by this ordinary disciple, Shen Ran could not help but widen his eyes. If not for his ability to read the narrations of the narratives, who would have thought that this ordinary disciple who looked mediocre and had mediocre strength was actually a top-notch expert who would be reborn in the future? Other than his own opportunities, he knew very well what opportunities others would obtain in the future. If nothing went wrong, this reborn disciple would become the only martial monarch realm expert who could sweep through everything. Too bad. He owns many opportunities which are very top-notch. Now, I will be sharing them with him. Shen Ran looked at the reborn Chen Beixian with shining eyes. Since the other party knew about all the top opportunities in the world, then Shinran himself need not have to spend any effort to observe everyone he saw in the future. Just grab hold of this sheep and pull hard. The most recent opportunity is the peerless sword mark in the cave after eliminating the Black Mountain bandits, and also the true dragon blood spring in the hidden Dragon Mountain. Chen Beixian was about to enter the mission hall. Unless something unexpected happened, he would first accept the mission to eliminate the Black Mountain bandits. After all, as long as the individual mission was accepted by someone, no one else could accept it unless the person failed or died directly. Shinran hurriedly accepted the mission to eliminate the Black Mountain bandits before Chen Beixian could. He wanted to ensure that Chen Beixian would not receive this mission again. Then he bolted out the front door as fast as he could. He headed to Hidden Dragon Mountain, where the true dragon bloodline turned into spring water. After Shinran left the mountain gate, Chen Beixian walked into the mission hall. He realized that the mission to eliminate the Black Mountain bandits had been taken by someone else. Chapter 30. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fight again. The ancient immortal eyes are fierce. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, has it already been claimed? Looks like this matter concerning the opportunity of the peerless sword technique, heaven-splitting technique, is not fated with me. Chen Beixian was not too disappointed to learn that the mission had been accepted. After all, this opportunity did not belong to him in his previous life. And after 10,000 years, he would not remember exactly when this mission had been accepted. Since the mission is gone, let's go and collect the true dragon blood spring in the hidden Dragon Mountain first. I remember that this opportunity was discovered in 3075, which is tomorrow. I'm going there now. I shouldn't miss it. As he thought about it, Chen Beixian accepted a mission that he had accepted in his previous life to kill a traitor of the sect. This mission was actually a small opportunity. The traitor of the sect had a cultivation technique, breath control technique, that could hide his aura. In his previous life, Chen Beixian had relied on this breath control technique to sneak into the depths of the Grand Myriad Mountains and obtain the Chaos Divine Fruit that only ripened once every 5,000 years. Thereafter, he began his path of cultivation. Chen Beixian walked towards the mountain gate unhurriedly, preparing to make a trip to Hidden Dragon Mountain. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Shinran was excited and sped up. His figure even turned into an afterimage that ordinary people could not see clearly. The advancing body broke the sound barrier. There was a sharp tearing sound. Who? When Shinran was 500 miles away from the Empyrean sword sect, his expression suddenly turned cold. The advancing body suddenly stopped. Looking around, he could clearly feel at least 30 sharp murderous spirits targeting him. As expected of the chief disciple of the 8th summit. His senses are sharp. Tap 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 tap. A hoarse, unpleasant male voice spoke. At the same time, more than 30 figures appeared and surrounded Shinran. Killing intent erupted from these 30-odd people at the same time, targeting Shinran. Wang Qingxuan's lackeys. You finally found me. Shinran's expression was calm. He looked around and saw that everyone was wearing green clothes that represented the ordinary disciples of the Empyrean sword sect. Oh! A man with a face covered in vicious scars stepped forward. It was the owner of the hoarse voice. You're not surprised by our appearance. It seems that you're the one who stole His Highness's blood cloud powder. As he spoke, the man opened his mouth, revealing dense, cold, and sharp black teeth. L.C. He forced a savage smile. Do you know how much impact you have on His Highness Dao Seed's cause? Although I don't know what trump card you used to instantly kill Hong Jing, who was at the 6th level of the Divine Sea Realm, you won't be able to escape today no matter what. Clang, clang, clang. The man's voice trailed off. He took out his weapon, the resentful bone whip, a black, spiked whip. This long whip was forged from the spines of 99 living people and their vengeful spirits. As soon as he took it out, one could hear countless desperate cries coming from the whip. The baleful aura lingered. Behind him, more than 30 people also drew their weapons. The momentum soared. None of these people were below the 4th level of the Divine Sea Realm. The man who spoke had reached the 8th level of the Divine Sea Realm. These people could handle any other 7th level Divine Sea Realm cultivator standing here. And they were enough to kill him 100 times over. However, the person standing here was Shinran. Are you all spies sent by the demon cult? Are all the spies from the demon cult planted in the Empyrean Sword sect all here? Under the pressure of more than 30 Divine Sea experts, Shinran's expression remained calm. He seemed unaffected. He asked them a question instead. The power of our divine sect is not something you can imagine. Be it core disciples or ordinary disciples, at least a fifth of them are members of the divine sect whose purpose is to achieve His Highness Tao Seed's great cause. In the eyes of the hoarse-voiced man, Shinran was already a dead man. So he answered carelessly. 1.5 I didn't expect the Empyrean Sword sect to be infiltrated by the demon cult to such an extent. Looks like I have to find time to deal with Wang Qingxian after obtaining the opportunity. Shinran frowned and muttered to himself. Then he continued walking in the direction of Hidden Dragon Mountain. How dare you insult His Highness Tao Seed? Die! Hearing Shinran's words, the expressions of all the demon cult spies, including the hoarse-voiced man, changed. Everyone erupted with spiritual energy and wanted to kill Shinran. And then... boom! 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 Everyone stood where they were. They did not even take a step forward. Before they could do anything, they felt an extremely domineering force rapidly expanding from the depths of their bodies, causing their bodies to expand, distort, and transform. A moment later, they exploded with a loud bang. And turned into more than 30 blood-colored fireworks made of human bodies. A large amount of blood, as well as countless pieces of flesh, bones, and internal organs, splattered everywhere. The ground and trees within a 10-mile radius were stained red and smelled of blood. Not only did the ancient immortal eyes have the power to see through all illusions and supreme techniques in the world, but they also had an extremely terrifying killing eye technique that could destroy the world. With Shinran's current realm, he still could not achieve the effect of annihilating the 9 heavens and 10 earths. However, it was easy to kill dozens of cultivators who were only at the Divine Sea realm. These 30-odd spies were already dead when Shinran scanned their bodies.